Welcome to the Sync Up With Infor, a dynamic discussion between leaders in the life sciences industry. Over the next 6 episodes, we're unlocking the secrets to a connected and integrated biotech and pharma industry. From the power of interoperability to the strategic choices behind integration engines, this series covers everything you need to know about building a robust data ecosystem, with insights from industry experts, case studies, and practical tips. Each episode offers a new step on the path to data-driven transformation. Let's start building the future together.
Hi, welcome back everyone. In our last episode, we unpacked the concepts of integration, how aligning systems and workflows can drive efficiencies, cut costs, and speed up time to market in the biotech and pharma space. We highlighted ways integration streamlines operations, creating smoother pathways for data to flow and for innovations to reach the market faster. Today, we're going to dive into connectivity, the foundation of a cohesive ecosystem. We'll explore how connected systems enhance collaboration, improve data accuracy, and ultimately create a unified environment for better research and clinical outcomes. Let's get into it. I want to thank Dom Bourgeon, I'm probably butchering his name, and Alexis Moore for joining me today. Dom, I'll let you introduce yourself first.
Yeah, good to be here. I'm Dom Bourgeon. I know it's not that easy to be able to pronounce for foreigners, but I'm leading the digital partnering activities for Roche Diabetes Care on the global scale. And I would say prior to that, I had the privilege also to work for our diagnostic division and mainly also covering digital topics. So it's really a pleasure to be able to share my experience and my knowledge of what it is to implement connectivity in the pharma and biotech space.
Awesome. Alexis.
All right, I'm gonna try your last name before I introduce myself. See how Bourgeon.
Yes.
Close? Woo! All right, we're done. Podcast is over. No, I'm Alexis Moores. I'm a senior account manager at Infor. My focus is on our biotech, pharma, life sciences, contract research, kind of everybody that falls under the life sciences umbrella, and helping them to create an interoperable network of all of their systems. So I am so excited to have you here to talk with today, Dom, and thank you for your time for being here. I'll pass it back over to Jeff.
Oh, very good. I actually didn't introduce myself. So Jeff Mueller with Infor. I'm the GMVP of our interoperability life sciences business. So we're very excited about this series in episode 4 here. So Dom and Alexis, how did you two meet?
Very simply, I think it was through Igor, one of the colleagues that got in touch with you and at one of the conferences, and we decided to engage the conversation because connectivity, data sharing is something which is really close to our heart.
It is. It was actually, I was at HIMSS in Orlando this past year, I think, is when I met up with Igor, and he was going around actually looking at different EHR systems to figure out how to integrate them and talking with vendors there. And I was like, hey, talk to me. Let's chat.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. I mean, that's what we do, right? We meet people, we start connecting people, and that's the way it works. So ironically enough, we're talking about connectivity today. So Dom, we'll go to you first with this question. So what does connectivity mean to you personally in your work, and how do you make it a priority?
For me, connectivity is really the essence of our work. Without connectivity, there is no possibility to be able to share data. And without any possibility to share data, you cannot develop any insight that will benefit the patients in the end. So for me, what does that mean at the personal level? It means also that I need to ensure that we have this connectivity that is working. In diabetes, this is particularly important, so that a patient can trust the data that they read on whatever digital device that they are using. And doctors need to trust that the data that are generated from any device that are reading their diabetes level, they can trust the data that they have. Many other aspects to connectivity that we will develop anyway during this podcast.
Okay, that's actually powerful. I think you should actually talk to Alexis about Cloverleaf. so, so,
So I think it's a great point too, because you bring in the human aspect of it. I think a lot of times when you talk about IT, data, um, systems, all of that, you oftentimes forget that the connectivity is for a human. And the human not just being the patient, a human being the physician, a human being the researcher, human being the engineer that's designing a medical device, it's the human experience behind everything and the trust, as you said, that you have to have in order to trust that the data you're getting is sufficient, accurate, actionable, and real. It's real data that's going to benefit everyone in the long run. So that's my 2 cents.
wow. I mean, it's you guys are starting this off in such a powerful way. So I don't want to lighten it up, but so Dom, any memorable moments, when connectivity or the lack of it, significantly affected or impacted a project?
On connectivity and the way that it affects our work, it does affect heavily our work, and sometimes it does affect also our ability to be able to partner with third parties. So in terms of if we are talking about really technological communication between a device and a digital tool, if there is a breach or an ability to be able to communicate between the device and the digital tool that any party has designed, then this makes even the best of the device on the market useless for us. And the other way around, you can have the best digital tool ever, but if this digital tool is unable to be able to retrieve and to correctly extract the information that you have on a device, then it's useless. So personally, in some cases, we had to decline to go further in some partnerships simply because there were incompatibility in the way that they were developing their products that would have made basically the outcome useless for patients and doctors.
That's a really good point. That's a really good point because I think that's something that often gets overlooked is, everybody gets very excited about what their, product can do or a drug, might be able to have the capabilities of doing. But if you can't connect outside of your individual network, it becomes very siloed. And just as you said, it can be useless almost, or you've got something that with the connection of a couple, 1, 2, 3 third-party vendors, you can use 100% of what it was meant to achieve versus 20% without that connectivity. I think that's a really, really great point. And I know, Jeff, I know you're going to go into some other stuff, but I want to ask one of the questions that you asked on a previous podcast to Dom.
Oh, here we go.
I'm very interested to see what you have to say. So on one of our previous, actually on our very first podcast, Jeff asked Tope Keys what movie title or theme of the movie would describe her. And she gave a great answer. Jeff's was Pitch Perfect, which I think is right on the money if you've seen that teenage movie. So I want to know what yours is. If you had to pick a movie title or the theme of a movie that describes you, what would you pick?
I would have sincerely no idea.
Is that a movie? I'm just kidding.
Now,
how about a show? Do you have one that you just like in general? A movie or show you like?
Yeah, I mean, we are very much into Korean dramas. So, yeah, I know my wife and I are binge watching this kind of Korean drama. But if there is one thing that would describe me, because I'm not exactly following that to the letter, but that would be not a movie, but in terms of a book, that will be this one. So this is about the All Blacks and how the All Blacks have built an all-winning team for almost 50 years. So this is really something that describe me, because there are a lot of the principle and the way that they are thinking that yes, it is. It
Okay,
is.
my husband played rugby in college. I was like, I know that. I know that. Sorry to cut you off, but keep going.
Yeah, no, it's fantastic. So I would say this is really about leaving the jersey in a better place. So for me, this is really the essence of whatever I'm doing. I'm trying to leave the jersey in a better place than it was when I took it.
Ah, that's
Wow,
amazing.
that's
Yeah.
powerful.
That's especially in this industry, when you think about, just as I said to start with, there's a person behind all of this. There's somebody that you're trying to help, or somebody's mother, father, grandfather, child, you know?
Um, I mean, just quickly sharing on that topic. I'm a scientist by training. Beside the MBA, I'm a scientist, and I was working on cancer. And my institute was overlooking one of the leading cancer institute that we have in France in terms of treatment. So every day when I was going to work, I was seeing the kids with cancer going back and forth. And I felt so helpless as a researcher to not be able to implement, or during my lifetime to have an impact on their lives. That's why I decided to move to the industry. And I think this is also why a lot of people in this industry are working. Yeah, the money is one part of it, but a great part of it is, and the essence of it is, because we want to be able to change the lives of the patients for the better.
Yeah, I think that's a really great point. And not to get too much off of topic, but I'm a member of Women in Bio, and one of the pillars that we focus on and follow, and that is bringing STEM into the youth. And I think that that's something that comes up often, is teaching them, about the good that you can do through STEM. And I think that that's one of the most amazing things within this industry. So totally off topic, but I think it's something worth bringing up.
No, that's outstanding. Like, Dom, I can't wait to bake bread with you sometime. I would love to hear more about your life and your passions. That's exciting. I actually will be over in France and Switzerland in a couple of weeks, so maybe we can get together. So
Yeah,
that's awesome. And I think I look back about all the people. We're actually, and this could actually be a completely different episode, but we're actually working with NVIDIA to optimize robotic surgery, right? And there's some powerful things coming, and that's where we're going over to France to work with Moon Surgical on a robotic surgery and really put some AI at the device level. And I look back, I've been in healthcare IT for 25 years now. And the people that have been here, a long time, 5+ years, they have a passion for the patient. They have a passion for optimizing workflow, because everybody has their own healthcare story, whatever it may be. And to be able to work in the industry and get excited about something that you're going to make an impact, it's significant, right? And we could talk for hours just about our passions and things like that, but making an impact to healthcare with what we're doing is really powerful. So with that, let's explore connectivity a little bit more and its role in data sharing. So how does connectivity, and you guys touched a little bit on this earlier, support the creation of a cohesive ecosystem for data sharing?
Look, you can't exploit the data for the benefit of the patient without bringing clarity, easy access, and coherence in the data that you will use. And you know that the data are not created equal. And this is, for me, where connectivity can help, as long as standards are defined. One of the examples that I'm usually using for that is that when you run, or you don't run, but when you drive at 80 miles per hour, this is not 80 kilometers per hour. This is 100 kilometers per hour. And if you are just comparing apple with apple, that's working. But if you are comparing apple with pears, then suddenly this is not working. And this is where, the connectivity is so essential, because you need to be able to bridge this gap between the different data, and eventually make them communicated with each other.
Okay.
Yeah, I think
Very good.
I really like your analogy there, the 80 miles per hour versus 130 kilometers per hour, right? So it really is, there is that difference, but equality that you have to pay attention to there. I don't know if I have much to add on it, because I think you made a great point completely across the board. And, there is a lot of benefit in having that cohesive ecosystem. But there's a lot of work to be done to get there too. I think that's something that I'd want to add into that.
Yeah. Yeah, some like we talked about on our first episode, going back to the first episode, some of it feels unachievable, right? So how do you pick where to start, right? What's going to get the biggest benefit for the least amount of work or effort? So what are some of the key benefits? And Dom, we'll start with you. What are some of the key benefits and challenges of maintaining connectivity within large organizations?
Ooh. This is, I mean, we could almost do an entire podcast on this topic. But I would say one of the main challenges that we may have within a large organization is the fact that you have opposite forces and you have also different agendas. And putting that simply, a lack of coordination and communication. And the last two are, in my opinion, the main challenges, because they are not easy to overcome, particularly when the company is as large as the one that I'm working for. I mean, we are more than 120,000 people, and on that, creativity is welcomed in our company. So it means that it's popping up everywhere. And unfortunately, this is not really mushrooming, because mushrooming involves the fact that you have a connector between all of that. This is much more isolated. So the fact that we are currently working on making this a bit more coherent, and when we have communication and clear coordination will help. But that is definitely the main issue that is existing. And the key benefit for me, in particular in the company, at Roche, is the fact that we can work on end-to-end solutions. So we can start from event screening to treatment and even post-treatment. So this is one of the privileges that we have. If we are doing the work well, we are capable of following the patients from the onset or even before until the end, and accompanying this not anymore patient to a sustainable part of his or her life.
Yeah, that's interesting too to think about, because there are a lot of companies that are large and have that capability, and there's also the complete opposite end of the spectrum of that. You've got your smaller startups that are very niche and have a very individualized focus, and maybe it's specific to Parkinson's, for instance, right? And what their focus on is creating the appropriate inclusion and exclusion criteria. So it's not even particularly on the treatment, but maybe their focus is from an AI perspective, for instance, right? And when you think back to the challenges of maintaining connectivity with that, it goes more than just internally. It goes externally, because they need to take what they have, move that to the next layer, to any partners that they're working with, any research organizations, even potentially public platforms that they're pulling in data from. And that in and of itself is a lot. But now you take that and you apply that to Roche, for instance, and not only are you thinking of the internal connectivity and progression from start to finish and post-finish, now you're thinking about all of your partners that you work with too on top of it. And it's this spider web. And it's got to be overwhelming from an operational perspective to think about it from that capacity. But then also, as you mentioned too, the support of creativity within your organization and all of the different personalities and thoughts that come with that. It just continues to expand and expand and expand and grow. And connectivity I can't even begin to imagine or comprehend where it can easily get lost. Things can easily get lost in that connectivity translation. And, that's really where we're kind of going back to a couple episodes back interoperability comes into play there, right? And how can we create an entire interoperability system, not just integration, not just integrating, point to point, but an interoperable community within the industry. I think that's interesting.
Yeah, it is powerful. And you guys kind of dove right into the next question, but so I want to bring it back just a little bit, right? So Dom, with Roche, a big company, very siloed to some extent, right? And we see it all the time with big companies, including ours. That everybody has their own project roadmap, their own day job. So connecting those different groups internally can be complex. But then, how do you get access to connecting all the data that exists outside the four walls of your organization? And when you think about it, is it easier to go connect outside the organization or inside the organization, or does it just depend?
It depends. It depends very much. But I would just like to add one point that just came to my mind, is the fact that I don't think that we have in a lot of companies metrics to measure success in terms of connectivity, data sharing, and any parameters that we would like to be able to assess regarding data. And if you are not capable of measuring, or if you do not consider that as something which is key, then you will not put parameters to be able to measure the success. And then this is something that will be left alone until it will become a problem. And that may be something that will be worthwhile, in the future, to be able to really integrate as part of the way of thinking about the way that we are using data. To be fair, at Roche, there have been a reorganization recently which has been very positive, and that has put all the digital activities under one roof. Before, you had activities in pharma, you had activities in diagnostic, activities in diabetes. Now we have everything consolidated under one roof. And basically, we have this powerhouse, which is providing solution for all the other divisions. And we hope that with such an organization, we will continue to be able to have mushrooming ideas all over in terms of developing product, but that will be within the digital department in communication with the other division. So, bringing something a bit more coherent with people that have an interest also to maintain this communication between services and therefore data quality. But I guess now I will be able to answer to your question. It depends. For the moment, we have had to adjust some communication protocols, some data that were not complete, not the same format, and so on between different services. But it's also the case when we are communicating outside. We do not know before to engage with a partner how they are creating their data sets, what kind of data they are collecting, the way this data is collecting, saved, and so on. So all of this can be a barrier, and that can be difficult to overcome if you do not have, for example, a tool that is capable to be above and to be the translator of the data. And this is one of the reasons that we got engaged with Infor to be able to discuss this kind of topic, because for us that was really an issue. We needed a translator that would be capable without having to do too much of an effort or to involve too many people, that will be able to do this translation of multiple data sets with different ways of structured and so on, to make sense out of this in a way that we will be able to use it for our purposes.
I think that
Wow.
you make a really good point there, because there is an exuberant amount of data, right? We know that. But if it's not usable, then I say no benefit. We know there's a benefit, but essentially there's no benefit to it. So how can you translate the data to make it usable? And also, I think another aspect of that that's really important is making that data available real time. I think that's one of the things that have, historically been an issue, is that typically you're doing batch transfers, it's taking a long time, but with the speed of society in general now, and the capabilities that we have technology-wise from wearable devices and being able to make decisions in real time, for physicians, what have you, that data has to be able to be extracted, transformed, loaded, all streamlined in real time, right? And so I think that that's something that is imperative in this industry now, because it goes back to making decisions and creating workflows that save lives.
No,
Yeah.
I mean that's
Wow.
100% on board with it, and I would just like to add the fact that because there is this kind of not existing necessarily existing standards, it's this is this lack of communication. We can take that out. So in the edit, that is just a personal reflection of mine on that. Whenever we try to standardize the things, it's a bit like the Blu-ray thing. You have a lot of people who have different ideas about what the standards should be, and no one is really willing to sit at the table and to have everyone going around and decide this is what will be set in stone for this kind of data. Everyone wants to have his own source because they think that what they do is better. But truth to be told, this is not the case, and it's creating more complexity than we did. You know that in the US, most of the merger between hospital is failing due to the costs associated with the merger of IT infrastructure. I can't remember the from when it was, but they analyzed basically the outcome on that, and it was such a headache for the people to have this measure of IT infrastructure that it offsets the cost of the measure by a magnitude or two or three. So, I mean, if we are not doing things that are meaningful in order to be able to simplify and having a tool like the one that you have to be able to make sense of data, and so that people can continue to work on whatever they want, but you have a translator in the middle that ensure that we have the same standard quality all over, that would be very complicated.
Absolutely. Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Sorry, that was a side note. So
No, it's a great point.
No, that's
It's a really
yeah.
wonderful point.
It's a great point. It's interesting because as a vendor, right? Sometimes we forget about the internal challenges you have. And one thing you said earlier was that Roche is starting to break down those silos. You're starting to collaborate more internally, and I think that's going to drive better success. So as a vendor, our ultimate goal is to be a partner, not a vendor, right? And to be transparent and figure out ways that we can take risks together and drive the cost of doing that down, and share the benefit of what we can do together. So that's great stuff. So Alexis, I'm going to hand this next question over to you. Can you share examples of technologies that enable connectivity?
Well, I'm going to have a shameless plug, also kind of go off of what Dom just said, but Cloverleaf, Infor Cloverleaf, that's exactly what it does. It's an integration engine that focuses on connectivity. It focuses on taking data from multiple disparate systems, extracting it, transforming it, loading it, and making that bidirectional connectivity in real time. That's exactly what it does. And I think, kind of piggybacking off of that, technology there's a lot out there. There's a lot out there. But something that I think I would recommend to listeners is don't just focus on technologies for connectivity. That's wonderful. But also look at technologies that's going to enable and support in other areas to create your entire cohesive ecosystem. I think that's something that often kind of gets forgotten about and lost in translation, is figure everything out, work from the end backwards, right? So we know that you're going to need a technology, a system that enables connectivity, but what else are you going to need? Work through all of it and move from the end to the beginning.
Right. I mean, it's like we talked about in earlier episodes, it's a journey, right? So find a partner that you can go through the connectivity, right? Step one, then step two, integration. And then finally, the ultimate goal of achieving interoperability, right? Optimizing workflow, patient outcomes, all those things. So I think that's the biggest thing. Where do you want to start? But most importantly, where do you want to finish, right? And that kind of short list, that list of vendors as well. So
Absolutely. Yeah, Dom, did you have any thoughts on that one? I'd love to hear. Sorry to cut you off, but I didn't know if you had anything to add in on that perspective.
No. I would agree. I mean, this is all about thinking about where you are good at and where others can complement your skill set. And there are things where we are good at, and there are things where, of course, we need to reach out outside in order to be able to complement what we know.
Okay. Very good. Well, as we go into the next segment, Dom, I'm going to hand it over to you to talk about a case study and an example of some enhanced outcomes.
Yeah. You know, when I was asked this question, I thought about one particular case that we had at Roche in Roche Diabetes Care. And this one was about the Continua protocol. So we decided really at certain point in time, that was even before my time, before I joined Roche Diabetes Care, but they decided at the time that it would be good to be open and to have an open ecosystem, so to allow developers to be able to develop an integrate connectivity to follow. We will edit that. Okay, going back. Yeah, I thought about one particular example. That was the Continua protocol. That was done a couple of years before my time, before I joined Roche Diabetes Care. And the idea was to be able to create an open ecosystem regarding our AccuCheck blood glucose meter. And specifically, the idea was to enable any digital developers to have this connectivity to our glucose meter to be established. So to not have something that would be proprietary. So we disclose the protocol of communication. We share what would be the processes to follow to enable this connectivity to happen. And it was great, but it was also a failure. So this is this is the part where it's balanced, because yes, it was great. A lot of small companies started to try to make it happen. Sometimes it was working well, sometimes it was not working well. But the problem is that because we had no visibility about who was doing what and when, if your iPhone has no connection to the 5G or to the Wi-Fi, you will blame the iPhone. You will not blame the Wi-Fi provider or the 5G provider. And this is exactly what was happening. So in a lot of cases, when there were inaccuracy in the data that were transmitted, when it was not in time, or where there were any kind of issue, it was always on Roche, never on the digital tool that was developed. So you imagine when you are receiving complaints and you do not know where does that come from, why is there, and what the heck is going on. And in fact, that's why we had to take a step back and think carefully about what we wanted to achieve. We want, as a company, of course, that the people will be proud to use our device, will trust, because it's diabetes. So you don't want to have misreading, or you don't want to have to prick your finger 10 times, because once it's already enough. So the idea was to bring back the control to it. And while it is not fully done yet, this is something that we really would like to be able to implement, to not allow anymore to have our blood glucose meter to have this Continua protocol, but to go through our companion app, because we have one, which is free, by the way, but this companion app, and then to have this companion app communicating with whoever wants to have this connectivity happening. So to have this data sharing towards another digital app or digital website or whatever digital you might imagine around that, and that will enable us to still keep the quality and the traceability over what is happening, and to be able also to come back to it if there is any issue. Because if we have an issue with the device, we will be able to know. If we have an issue with the connectivity, we will know, and that will allow us to have a better answer to our customers. So basically, this is when having an open ecosystem is good, but it's bad at the same time.
Exactly. Yep.
Right, right.
Yep. That conceptualized idea versus the reality of what can happen after the concept is implemented.
Yeah, and even to add on that, we try to be a bit more proactive on this aspect, and to have people dedicated to support companies that would like to use this continuum protocol. But it's cumbersome. It's quite expensive, because we are dedicating people to do this task, and often the level of maturity of the company reaching out to us is much lower than they thought they are. So it's creating also even more work on our side. So that's why it was not really a good, in the end, a good idea. It was a good idea, but to be implemented in a different way.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That makes sense. Yeah, I think I think when you think about where connectivity can improve collaboration, there's going to be a ton of ideas, right? And that was an amazing example of where it really can, and it improves collaboration there. But it's understanding the steps that need to take place and the potential outcomes, almost like a predictive analytics thought before implementation. But I think that there's still such a big learning curve with a lot of that, where despite maybe preparing in the best possible way in any capacity, there's still going to be a lot that you have to think through and work through as you're going through it, kind of just speaking to your point of how that entire situation transpired from start to finish.
But there is also another issue, which is hidden in the middle of all of that. This is linked to data ownership. I mean, we know that the patient are the owner of their data, but, and this is the big but in the middle, companies still want to have a piece of it, and they do not feel comfortable to share data that have gone through their flow, maybe through their device or through their app or whatever, and that is also preventing a better quality of collaboration. This is not only of having the data, but is ensuring that that basically the two companies that have data of interest for both of them will be able to share this data in a place where they will feel safe, that nothing bad will happen or that will be detrimental to their business. And we have a very specific example. We try to work with a leading company in the smart device that any kind of people are wearing, and it was super interesting. We had a very good discussion. We have the joint objectives, and we were very clear about what we wanted to be able to achieve, and that would have been great for people living with diabetes. However, we reached a level of complexity when we talked about data. The data that would have been generated on our joint venture for this particular project, because there were some fear that were existing for our senior leaders, for example, that the other company that was more tech oriented would be able to reverse engineer whatever product will be created out of this, and will basically gain a specific advantage over us in the digital space, learning from us, learning too much. So there is also this kind of misunderstanding or misconception about the ownership of the data, and finding the best way or a neutral broker that is capable of basically helping companies to be able to communicate with each other without having the feeling that they will lose anything by sharing specific sets of data with each other. I don't know if it's super clear. I hope that that it is, but feel free to delete that during the edit phase.
No, it's interesting because we run into this often with PHI, right? So it's all about the liability. Who's going to take on the liability? And to your point, the things that come out of the partnership or that connectivity, who's going to own that, right? And those things delay projects, right? They delay things getting where we want them to get to, and we go through that all the time, especially the liability thing. When you think about this next phase of AI, there's a whole other level of liability and data that goes with that. So how do we work as companies together, partners, to get past that, stay in our own lanes, but with the intent of better patient outcomes, right? And that should trump everything to some extent. So
Yeah, absolutely.
Alexis, yeah.
I mean, it makes complete sense to me. I think one of the conversations that we have had come up here recently too is, implementing FHIR resources, anonymization, things along those lines to help with protecting the data in some capacity. I think that a point that you were making there as well is once two entities have access to data, it's almost like who can capitalize on it quicker is the concern there, and who might try to monetize that in some capacity. And I think that that's a really great point that probably doesn't get brought up as often in the public space as much as it does with your stakeholders who are having to constantly think about that ownership, that data ownership there.
Yeah, and it needs to come very early in the process. I mean, and that's why I'm kind of really happy with the law in Europe. So basically, this is really helping to frame from a contractual perspective. Sorry, that's really helping to frame from a contractual perspective the way that the data will be used and the limitation in terms of the use of the data. So it's kind of helping also senior stakeholders to feel that, okay, they will not be able to do what we think that they would be able to do because they are restricted in terms of the use, because we have defined that by contract. So I think that is the kind of things that can help, but it needs to be a conversation that you have with your partner at the beginning, not once you are in the negotiation phase. This is really something that you need to have that very clear. This is about sharing and know what you are sharing.
So let's start to wrap up the episode. And as we wrap up today's episode, let's look ahead to our next discussion. We've been talking about, the previous episodes, kind of a buy and build, but where we'll tackle one of the biggest strategic questions organizations face: buy versus build, or like we've talked about or alluded to, buy and build. So when it comes to integration decisions, connectivity plays a pivotal role in determining the right approach. Should you invest in building custom solutions tailored to your ecosystem, or is it more effective to buy off-the-shelf tools that prioritize interoperability? We believe there's a place for both. So in episode 5, we'll explore how organizations weigh those options, the trade-offs involved, and how connectivity factors into achieving seamless integration. We'll also dive into how standards, traceability, long-term scalability can help shape these critical decisions. So Dom and Alexis, how do organizations start to balance the need for tailored solutions with the industry's growing emphasis on interoperability and standardization?
I think that tailored solutions might not be the best way to put it, because if you go back to that buy versus build versus the hybrid model, I think you need to start with a concept and make adjustments. So it's not entirely tailored, it's adjust it to fit the needs, the capabilities, the systems that are already in place, and focus on how standardization can fit in with what you already have. I think that may be where the tailored side of it comes into place. But interoperability, it's kind of been the word of the year this year as we get into things and how we can focus that emphasis on interoperability within this industry. And that's where a tailored solution comes into play, is creating interoperability that works not only for your industry, or your company itself, but for the industry as a whole, in conjunction with standardization.
Yeah, and I mean, this is difficult. Yeah, this is difficult stuff we're talking about, right? It's not easy. It's complex. And I think organizations need to be thinking about a tailored or custom solution might be reacting to a particular, use case, but how do you support that going forward, right? And that's where kind of a buy and build strategy, I think, comes into place, because, a lot of these endpoints that you're pulling data from are constantly getting updated, things like that, and versions of translation start to change. And if you have a homegrown or in-house built tailored or custom solution, how is that going to take on all of those different complex changes that are coming from those endpoints, right?
Yeah.
And that's where maybe a buy and build actually comes into play. So
you did a much better job of explaining what was in my brain there.
I assumed you kind of teed that up for me. You teed that up for me, Alexis. So Dom, I don't know if you have any thoughts.
Look, of course, plenty of thoughts. Even a bit too much, but overall, I mean, we will tackle that most likely in the next episode. What I do believe is the fact that you always need to focus on what you are good at in order to deliver the maximum of impact. Whatever we do needs to match the level of impact that we want to have on the lives of the patients. So if, in order to achieve this impact, you need to have your own tool that will be 100% homegrown with your own team, dealing with all the complexity to adjust to new technologies, speed that will happen on the market, do it. But then you need also to have the clarity in terms of resources that will be put into this to make sure that you will be able to adjust to any change. If you think that your resources will be better used to do something else, then you will look outside. And then the question will be, should it be a fully bought model that we will just make some adjustments and we will have to adjust internally to that? Or should it be something that will be hybrid, where the partner company that we are working with is offering enough flexibility for us having something that will be able to be more culture adapted to our company? And I think this is the kind of questions that needs to be asked. And what is missing usually whenever people are entering this kind of conversation, this is the lack of clarity of intent at the beginning. So what are you trying to achieve? Once you are clear about what you are trying to achieve, then you can build the entire story around.
I'm excited to deep dive into this on the next episode, because I think you're starting down a path that I'm like, all right, well, let's sit by the fire and have a little grown-up beverage and keep talking through this one, because I got a lot of thoughts.
Very good. Yeah, very good. It's complex, right? It's exciting stuff. So Dom, Alexis, thanks for the input. Today's discussion, really underscored the complexity and opportunities that come with building a truly connected ecosystem. And one of the biggest takeaways was the importance of standardization, right? Dom, you pointed out how the lack of unified standards across third-party integrations can create significant challenges, much like handing off an unfinished program to another team. It often leads to failure. You shared Roche's experience with the Continua protocol for diabetes monitoring, highlighting both the potential of open standards and the risk when systems lack alignment. The need for control and traceability in data flows was another critical point, as without it, the customer experience and trust can suffer. On a broader scale, Alexis kind of brought us back, reminded us that within large organizations, competing agendas, poor communication often hinder connectivity. And as Dom noted, when done right, connectivity empowers organizations to deliver end-to-end solutions from screening to treatment with clarity, coherence, and ultimately better outcomes for patient. This episode made it very clear connectivity isn't just about linking systems. It's about creating a foundation of trust, alignment, and accessibility that supports innovation and enhances patient care. And we continue to, challenge the audience, in your day-to-day jobs, what does that journey of connectivity, integration, interoperability mean to you? How do you get your balance of life back? We've talked about that before too, right? So reach out to us. Let us sit at the table. Let's talk through some of this stuff. As Alexis alluded to, we'll go start a fire somewhere, have an adult beverage, create a Hallmark movie. We'll all work together in this broader thing. So I want to thank everyone for tuning in. Hopefully you enjoyed episode 4. And we look forward to episode 5 and building on that. So, and talking about not necessarily, as we just kind of talked about, not a build versus buy, but a build and buy strategy based on what you're trying to accomplish. So thanks for tuning in. Dom, Alexis, thank you as always. And I look forward to our next episode.